Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little watch right here. This is the Breitling Navitimer 01. First off, though, I want to thank my buddies over at Lewis Jewelers in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They loaned me this guy for a day or two to check out, kind of take back to my studio, do some research, kind of just see how it really is outside the store. Sometimes it's hard to tell, just looking at something in a store, what's going on here, and so that's a great opportunity, and I want to thank them for it. But they do, of course, know that I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, might be junk, but they're still willing to do that, so that's great. And actually, by the way, these are the folks who I use for all of my purchases, so, if you need this or anything else, just give them a call. Call my buddy DK, tell him Nick sent you, they'll hook you up in some special pricing. So anyways, thanks again, Lewis, for sending this guy along. Next thing, let's talk a little bit about the size of this guy. First off, a size comparison directly. Here it is against the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean. So you can see that although the dials are relatively similar in size, the thickness is actually much smaller on the Navitimer here. Even though this is a chronograph movement and this guy is not, that says more about the incredible thickness of the Planet Ocean than about anything else, but it is still something you're going to want to keep in mind there. Here it is against another Breitling. This guy from my personal collection, this is the Breitling Aerospace, which is in many ways a more modern version of this, with some newer features, etc. This is a quartz watch, of course, but anyways, there you go. And so you can see they're relatively similar in size, although the Navitimer is thicker for sure because it's a mechanical chronograph. That tends to be a thick sort of thing to do. Then finally, against a much less expensive chronograph, here it is against the Casio F91W. So you can see here, yeah, it's a little bit bigger. And then let's do a couple of quick measurements real quick. We can take a look at the overall dial width, which is coming in right at around 42 millimeters here. The lug-to-lug distance is coming in at, being careful here is not to scratch up a very, very nice little watch here. Coming in at 49 millimeters, someplace in that, 48, 49. And then the overall thickness of this guy, again, being a little bit on the careful side, coming in at 14 millimeters here thick. So this is not a particularly wide watch, and frankly, it's not all that huge. Usually chronographs, especially mechanical ones, tend to be freaking huge, and this one isn't, so I appreciate that. And then finally, this guy, like I said, is new in box, and I haven't had a chance to wear this out and around and about, because I want to keep it in good condition for whoever ends up with it. So do keep that in mind, and that's why I'm not going to issue a final gem or junk verdict at the end of this, because, well, I haven't had enough time with it. Then the reference on this guy, for those of you curious, is AB012012BB01. That's right. So anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this really interesting little watch here. So first off, on the good side, I actually just alluded to this, but the size of this watch is great. Meaning that it, even on my relatively small wrists, and I do have a relatively small wrist, this still works pretty well. Looking at like 6.75, 6.5-inch wrist, and you know what? It still fits me. It's okay. And so I like that very much. This is a chronograph that feels like it's not clunky. It's not like, oh my God, and it's still automatic, which is good. Next thing, the strap on this guy is very nice. You can see it's a nice leather sort of thing, and it's on a Breitling style deployant clasp. What that means is that unlike some deployants where the strap has to come outside and then go into a little minder here, on the Breitling style it stays inside, and that's actually a really nice thing. It makes it a lot easier to pop this guy on very quickly and pop it back off again very quickly. It's a good approach. I like these deployants a lot. You can also see that the strap itself is relatively thick, which gives it some long-termness, and it is also a continuously adjustable clasp. What you can see here is that you can just slide a little bit more of this bracelet material through here and size this to fit any wrist size that you'd like, and even if your wrist swells a little bit, you don't have any, like, discrete adjustments. You don't have to move from hole to hole. You can just scoot it out just a little tiny bit, and you know what? That's great. That gives adjustability that is absolutely wonderful, so that's good. Next thing, I'll probably flip the watch the right way. That might help, right? So next thing, the crystal on this guy here, I'll disengage that, make things go a little easier. The crystal on this guy is great, and more specifically, what's great about it is that it is incredibly anti-reflective. So you can see here, actually, I've got a little light cloud that's up above here, and you can see the blue shadow of it. But if I put a watch that is not anti-reflective up against that, you can see exactly that, just completely washing out the screen. So this anti-reflective crystal not only makes it look like in most lighting conditions there's not a crystal there at all, but it's really good for helping legibility. And the crystal itself, by the way, has a very nice dome to it, with actually some cool magnification. There are some neat effects that go on as you kind of zoom onto this. So it's a little detail, but it's one I enjoy. So that's good. Next thing, this actually has very nice loom. It has luminous compound applied, and I'm going to charge this off screen with a very powerful flashlight here. And then you can see, as I kind of cover this up, just how strong that loom is. Both the hour hand and the minute hand are loomed, and then you also get loom pips at each of the hour markers. And they've done that for all of them, although it's worth noting that the ones at 9, 3, and 6 are very, very small and do tend to fade. But this is going to be legible pretty much all night long. This is very, very good loom, and Breitling uses a good compound there. I have a very similarly loomed aerospace here, especially in the hand, and you know what? It's great. And so I like very much that loom. You can see it's powerful enough that it's even visible after being charged during the daytime, so to speak, and that's nice. Next thing, this is using the Breitling Bo1 Movement. Now, this is an in-house movement. That means that Breitling, from the bottom to the top, has designed and built this movement. And you know what? Does that actually really matter? No, but it is a cool thing, orologically speaking, and it's a cool movement, 100%, because you get things like a date window right down there. It is the 18th. And it has a quick set date function, so you pull this out a little bit. I can just slide it forward. And guess what? It's now the 19th. Case freaking closed. That's a nice little detail, and it makes it a lot easier if you, for instance, at the end of the month, if you go from a 30-day month to a 31-day month, just jump it forward there. It's an automatic watch, which means it has a rotor in there, which is going to keep this guy wound if you're wearing it on a regular basis, which is a good thing. It has a 70-hour power reserve, which means you can take it off your wrist, and it's going to run for 70 hours, no problem. That's great. And it is a chronometer. They have it right here, chronometer, right there. And what that means is that that's different from being a chronograph. A chronograph is timing things. The chronograph is the part that's running right now. A chronometer just means that it's timed, it's regulated such that it stays within a certain spec set by COSC. And so basically this is going to be a very accurate watch, 100%. And so that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, you can see here it is also a chronograph, and that is one of the big things that the Navitimer's got going for it. It's got these 3 subdials and this main red second hand here that's been going and going and going. And actually, I've had the chronograph running now for about an hour. Actually, about an hour and 15 minutes. Actually, an hour and 14 minutes and 30 seconds. See, you've got 1 hour over here on this 12-hour chronograph dial. You've got 14 minutes here, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 30 seconds. So I started this as I was working on my review, and I figured, oh, what the heck, I'll just let it run. And so this is a great way to time things, whether you're timing a talk, whether you time it, just whatever you have to time, this is a good way to go about doing so. And the fact that you've got a 12-hour dial and a 30-minute dial is great, because when they have a 60-minute dial here, it gets a little bit hard to read individual minutes. But 30 minutes is great, and then with the 30 minutes and the 12 hours, you can always tell exactly, this is a great arrangement, because it gives you 12 full hours worth of time and things. Technically 24, because I believe it'll go around and, you'll remember exactly where you were, whether 12 hours has gone by already. But look, it's a great chronograph arrangement here. And it does have all the nice features of a chronograph, namely that it does reset. See, watch, all the hands are going to reset here. Boom, reset, and instantly reset because it is a mechanical chronograph. Then you can restart it again, and it'll start again. Beautiful. And it also has right here a tachymeter. See this inner scale here with the 500, 400, 350, 300? That means that if I had started this when I passed 1 mile marker, and then I was, waiting, watching for another mile marker, and I stop it right here, I was just going 220 miles an hour. This can be used for any kind of blank per blank sort of scale. You can do it for kilometers. I mean, it's a nice little detail there, and it's something that can be helpful for pilots as well as for drivers, etc. Although, again, if you're relying on your watch to time your driving, it's not going to go over well with the highway patrol. Something to keep in mind. But that's good. Next thing that this has that is really cool is a slide rule bezel. That's right, these 2 rounds and numbers here, and in fact, this part out here, this turns. See, watch, it's turning right now as we freaking speak. The bezel and the crystal are turning. Sorry, a little bit of schmutz got on there. All right, bezel and crystal are turning. And what this actually allows you to do is to do math. And this watch actually comes with an entire book on how to use the slide rule, as well as a little mock-up of the dial, which is cool. But you can use this to multiply, divide, do unit conversions, tip calculations. You can use currency conversions. So, okay, right over here, I've got a little 10. Right now, I know, because I just looked it up, that a Great British British pound is they're $1.42 in a single British pound. And so if I want to do some unit conversions, what I'm going to do is move the 1.42 right over here to the 10 mark over here. Now, let's say that I walk into a shop in Britain and they say, okay, that's going to be 32 British pounds. So I look on the inner dial and I find 32 right there. And then I look and I see what that corresponds to on the outer dial. Okay, it's about 44 bucks, 45 bucks, thereabouts. That right there tells me something. That's good information. I can do those unit conversions in an instant. Similarly, if I want to figure out, okay, I want to pay you 75 bucks because I don't freaking know. I want to do it in pounds, though. You just look, 75. Oh, okay, it's going to be like 53. There you go, case closed. And that's really, really easy. And currency conversions are one of the best use cases for this. The other one is actually distance conversions. Because you see right here, there's a kilometer one, and then there's statutory and nautical miles over here. So let's say that I want to go like 55 miles, and I want to figure out what that is in kilometers. So what I'm going to do here is move the dial here so that 55 lines up with statutory miles. And then I look over here on the kilometer side, and what I see is that it's about 88. So that means that there are, for 55 miles, that's 88 kilometers. Easy freaking peasy. You didn't have to do any math, and it's right there on there, and you can figure it out very quickly. Okay, what's 25 miles in kilometers? Right there, line that up with statutory. Okay, it's a little bit more than 40 kilometers. Neat. Little thing, but it's really cool, and it makes you feel like a wizard, because most people are busting out their phone, asking, hey, Siri, how do you calculate this stuff? And you've done it already with this analog timepiece on the wrist. That's kind of cool. And it is really easy to manipulate. It's bi-directional, feels super smooth. Honestly, it's a nice feeling rotation. I like very much a slide rule. It's a great thing. Then finally, speaking of unit conversions, although there's still the sticker on here, because like I said, this is pretty much new in box, what you can see underneath there is that there is actually a temperature scale. So 140 Fahrenheit is about 60 Celsius. This is a little detail, but you know what? This is something that would have helped me like 3 different times in the last week. Just because that way you're not having to pull one out. You can just pop this guy off your wrist because you're on this deploying class, so it's easy, and then just go, okay, well, hold on, what's 94 Fahrenheit? Because I'm talking with Germans all the time, and they don't speak Fahrenheit because they're reasonable and use reasonable units. So anyways, that's beside the point. So those are the beautiful things about this watch here, is that it's got the Fahrenheit scale in the back here. It's got a slide rule bezel, which you never think is going to be useful. Then you get one, you're just like, holy crap, this is useful. You get a chronograph on there. It is the Bo1 in-house movement. It's got good loom, a great anti-reflective crystal, a nice strap, and a nice size. On the great side, to me, honestly, I think this is a freaking beautiful watch. I mean, yes, it's busy, 100%. As the people on Instagram said, can you put a couple of more numbers on there? Well, no, you can't. But at the same time, I think it looks incredible. And honestly, it looks great in different lighting conditions. As you change the lighting conditions, this dial starts to look different. Here, I'm going to put a little bit more light on it from the side here, and you're going to see, likely, a slightly different coloration. Now you see a little bit of sunburstitude coming out from it. That's really attractive. Similarly, with the Breitling crystal, you get a blue reflection sometimes. But it looks great. And just having this guy out and about in the sun, and your natural lighting in the home, by candlelight, I don't freaking know. It's going to look beautiful each different time. So I like the dial very much, and it looks just way better on my desk than it does at a jewelry store. This is true. And there are other details in here. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. For starters, the typography on this thing is absolutely beautiful. Look at this typesetting, and it's beautifully printed on there. There are no printing errors anywhere on here. It's gorgeously done. Similarly, you get an applied logo on here. This is a separate piece of metal that is laid onto the dial, along with the indices, which are all applied as well, which is really cool. You get the second-hand counterweight here. You can see has a little bit of the Breitling logo going on there. That's kind of cool. See it, not the second-hand, but the Chrono second-hand there. Rotating out of the way, that's kind of neat. Another thing that's a good sign that somebody gives a damn is these little, the hands on the subdials here. You can see that these are not just little cutouts of flat plastic, but they are individually contoured little reflective polished hands. They look really, really good, and I think that's a nice sign that they care. The case on the watch is overall really nice too. You can see the lugs are interestingly sculpted here. The scalloping on this guy, you can see that they've polished the outside, although they seem to have blasted the inside of it, which is really a nice little look there. there. It has a very nicely domed crystal, as I already pointed out, which is just beautiful. The measurement conversions on the back, I mean, there is a reason, frankly, that this is a classic. This is an attractive watch. You look at this watch, or at least I look at this watch and go, damn, that's pretty. Well done, Breitling. And I think for good reason. So to me, that's actually what's great about this guy is I find it a really attractive piece in a very weird function-forward sort of way. So anyways, that's what's great, is that I find it really beautiful, and I think a lot of people do, which is why this has become a classic. On the bad side, there are some bad things. I mean, first off, like I said, can you put any more numbers on here? I mean, seriously, you've got a tachymeter, you've got a slide rule, you've got all kinds of different things going on here. It is a little bit on the busy side, 100%. I mean, holy crap, guys. Next thing, this is not on the watch itself, but this is a watch that is very commonly counterfeited. People make fakes of these guys, and then they're not good fakes. You don't actually want to buy one or anything, but they're out there, and so you need to be very careful if you're buying one of these, particularly in the secondary market. You should in fact just buy from an authorized dealer. That is a better approach pretty much always. And you should just be really, really careful, because if you find a great deal, if somebody's knocking many grand off the purchase price and they're not authorized, well, as the saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, you know what? It probably isn't true. And so keep that in mind. Be very, very careful here. This is a big danger with a watch that's as iconic as this guy. Next thing. Now, that's not on the watch, though. There is no independent hour hand. What I mean by that is, let's say that I get on a plane, because I'm a pilot here, and I move, back a time zone. I go to Chicago, for instance. I pull this guy out, and now my second hand over here has actually stopped. And so in order to do this, I would need to go back a full hour, and now my second hand is stopped. My watch is no longer accurate. I'm like 5 seconds, 10 seconds off, however long it took me to make the change off. As opposed to on watches that have what's called an independent hour hand. For instance, on this Omega here, if I pull the crown out to the first position here, I can pull this out, and then I can slide 1 forward, 1 hour forward, 1 hour back, etc. I can go to Chicago, and you know what? My second hand never stopped running. My minutes in the same position made it really, really easy to switch time zones in just a flash. And considering that this is a pilot's watch, this watch probably should allow that to happen. So that struck me as a little bit weird, and like one of the few areas where it's like functionally a little inconsistent. Next thing, this is a closed case back. I mean, you can see that here, and again, sorry for the sticker, but yeah. But there's no sapphire, there's no way to look in at what is a very pretty movement in there. Some of the other models do offer an open case back, but that is something that on a mechanical watch I appreciate. I love being able to look in and see the mechanics, see the balance wheel, see everything going, just because it's like, oh yeah, that's why I paid all that freaking money for a mechanical watch. So that's something to keep in mind. Next thing, this has no anti-magnetic rating at all. I was unable to find any reference to magnetic resistance for this guy, and obviously this is not something I can test. But this is kind of a bit disappointing to me, because considering that companies like Rolex and Omega are now just guaranteeing across their lineup by using very specialized materials that the watch is anti-magnetic, I'd like to see Breitling follow suit. The world is getting more and more magnetic each day with things like iPad cases and flashlights with magnets in the back of them and things like that. It's starting to that's a serious Achilles heel, that is, for mechanical watches. So there you go. Next thing, this is a chronograph watch, and look, that's a great thing for some people, but the thing is, it is a complication. Quite literally, that's what watchmakers call it, and it means something, because it is going to be more expensive to buy a chronograph watch rather than a three-hander. That's the case. They are also more difficult to service, particularly an in-house movement like this guy. You're probably going to want to send this guy back to Breitling when it's time for service, and because it is a mechanical watch, you are going to be servicing it, and it is not going to be cheap. You're going to pay good money to service this down the road. And, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And so when you buy a chronograph, you are getting complication. You are getting a watch that is going to be more complicated than it otherwise would need to be. And given that your phone probably has a chronograph in it, you should really stop and think to yourself, do I need a chronograph or no? And if you don't, well, you might buy something else. But, you know, it's attractive. What can I say? Next thing, the band on this guy is a little bit weird for smaller wrists, because you can see here that although the deployant clasp kind of tucks in there, you can see that this is tapers down. And so as you get smaller and smaller, not only does this kind of have to bend up more and more in there, but it also gets harder to adjust further and further. So for me and my 6.5-inch wrists, it kind of wears a little bit strangely, especially because this side still remains very long. So it's kind of hard to bias the strap over there. So they may make a smaller wrist version of this strap, and, I think that's something to look into. But keep that in mind, particularly if you are among the smaller wristed individuals out there. Next thing, I got to say, the white subdials and the watch on the whole is not the most legible thing ever. Here, I'll move the hour hand back out of the way again. Oh, hold on. Stop the chronograph, reset everything, then I'll pull this out. But anyways, so what you do here is, as you can see, from many angles, it's absolutely legible, and the loom definitely helps. Those little tracts of loom on the hands definitely make it more legible, but there are definitely angles from which it's kind of hard to tell at a glance, especially when the hands are over the white subdials, exactly what time it is. As opposed to sort of my glasses aren't even on, but I can still read it, legibility of this little guy here. Having all the stuff on the dial definitely does impact that, so that's something to keep in mind. Then finally, on the bad side, this is a watch that is very expensive. This is $8,200 is the retail price, or thereabouts. And that is the retail price, though. You should not pay retail. For any luxury watch, just don't pay retail. It's a bad freaking idea. Talk to an authorized distributor. Find one in your area, or heck, talk to mine. Talk to Lewis. They will give you, tell them Nick sent you. DK over there will give you some special pricing, but do not pay retail price, because that's a lot of freaking money. It is a lot of money. Seriously, that is a life-changing amount of money for a lot of people. But the thing is, at some level, though, this watch, more than some of the other ones I've looked at on the channel, feels like it's done enough to earn it, because this is a complicated movement. It's a chronograph, but it's well done. It is COSC certified, so you're getting accuracy. It's a beautifully finished case, and there's not really any place in here where I feel like, oh, they just cut a corner there. A couple of places where they need improvement, but then none of it's like, oh, that's lazy. And so I don't really resent the price of this guy in the same way I do some other watches, and this feels like a much better value than, say, the Omega Speedmaster Pro, which had a real sense of like, oh, what are you doing, Omega? And so I like this a lot, even at that kind of a price point. But you still have to ask yourself whether you're going to be happier with that amount of money in your savings account or on your wrist. Because after a few weeks, no matter how extravagant the watch is, it's just going to be what tells you the time. And remember that, like any luxury watch, there's a big gap between retail and resale. So if you plan to sell it, plan to take a bath. But anyways, to me, all of that is the bad, is that it's $8,200, which is a lot of freaking money. The white subdials are not a win for legibility, especially at different angles here. It's very easy for the hands to disappear on this relatively busy dial. The band is a little weird for smaller wrists. The chronos are a complication, and it may not be something you need in your life. It's not anti-magnetic rated. There is a closed case back on here, which hides the beautiful movement. There's no independent hour hand. It is a regularly counterfeited watch, so be very careful if you're chasing deals, because yeah, it's dangerous. And it's got a couple of numbers on there here and there. On the ugly front, there are only two things I consider ugly here. One is that this is a 3-meter water resistance rating. So I know what you're thinking, but Nick, 3 meters, that's like 9 feet. That's like the deep end in a pool, at least some pools. But the thing is, that's not actually how it works. 3 meters is basically treat it like it's not water resistant at all. Yes, in theory, you should be able to wash your hands and splash some water up onto there and the watch will not be destroyed, but this is an $8,000 watch. You need to treat this watch as if water is a threat to it. I get that it's a chronograph, that it's on leather, that it's an aerospace watch, and if you're aerospace in and you're underwater, you got yourself a big problem there and it ain't your watch. And it doesn't even have like a screw-down crown or anything. Makes it real easy to wind, but seriously, 3 meters water resistance is not great. And the other thing to remember is that whatever seals are there are going to fade over time, particularly as you get closer and closer to service. So even if it's 3 meters right now, you can't trust it. So this is basically a watch that is vulnerable to water in a serious way, and that's ugly to me. I'd like to have seen them push it a little bit better and give this a slightly better rating than 3 meters, which is basically, yeah, just run from water. You have to be freaking hydrophobic. It's like you got rabies. If you got rabies, wear this watch. Because, yeah, you'll be in line. That makes you hydrophobic? No? Okay. Anyways, that's beside the point. And speaking of water, I hope you like taking baths because you're going to take one of these. If you're going to take a bath, that is, if you buy any luxury watch at retail and then sell on the secondary market. This guy is $8,200 new. I'm seeing them looking on like Watch Recon and whatnot. They're about $4,500 used. So again, don't pay full retail price. Talk to an AD, pay a more reasonable value there, and also buy carefully. This is not a watch you want to buy if you're not sure you're going to keep it in the long term, or else you're going to pay, well, you're going to lose some money. So those are the two ugly things here, which is that you take a huge bath if you're going to sell this guy in the secondary market. And if you do take a bath, you shouldn't wear this watch because it's only 3 meters water resistant, and that's not really a water resistance rating at all. But final conclusions, I like this watch a lot, actually. It's got great finishing, it's got great design, it's got a great movement with guaranteed accuracy, which is a big thing. It's got great loom, it's got a great dial, it has the utility of the slide rule, which I know you're thinking, oh God, Nick, you're a freaking geek. But the thing is, it is really useful. Once you have one of them, you're like, wow, that's cool. You use it all the damn time. And it is just a beautiful piece. I mean, there is a reason that this is a classic watch out there. Absolutely 100%. It is not perfection, though, because not everybody needs a chronograph to start with. And, the lack of anti-magnetic reading, the poor water resist, the legibility issues can be a little bit of an issue, and the price is way up there. But the thing is, they've done everything else, honestly, really well, and so I'm willing to forgive a lot of that, because the end result is a watch that's both really excellent, really useful, and really attractive. And I can see this appealing to people who are like pilots. That's kind of who this is meant for, but also to people who drive, or people who just want something really beautiful to wear on their wrist, with a uniquely kind of function-forward sort of aesthetic. There are two comparisons, though, that I want to make pretty explicitly here with this watch relative to some other biggies in the market. One is with the Omega Speedmaster Professional, the Moon Watch. And honestly, to me, there is no contest between those two, because this guy has a date window. This guy is automatic, has a sapphire crystal rather than a hezolite plastic. It is chronometer certified, which means they guarantee the accuracy, unlike Omega with the $6,000 Speedmaster Pro. Honestly, this is a great watch, and frankly, it feels a little bit better. The Omega is definitely $2,000 cheaper. That's nice. It is more legible, and it does have a really cool story, what with the moon thing. But honestly, this right here, the Navitimer, is a watch I would love to own. The Speedy is a watch that I was very glad to have a look at. But I don't think I would want one in the long term. The other watch that I think really deserves a comparison here is actually that Breitling Aerospace I was just showing off a moment ago. Because in many ways, these are going after a similar niche. Because the Aerospace here is, they're very different. This is decidedly old school. The Navitimer is old school, and it's got, it's nicely made, and it feels more nicely made. This feels like jewelry. This feels like a tool. This is a timepiece, and this does have the slide rule, which is cool. But the Aerospace has a lot more features. You've got things like here, come on, there we go. You've got an alarm that you can set. You can use this as a chronograph, and with sub-second accuracy. You've got a light-up display on there. It's more durable, different time zones, etc., and it's ridiculously accurate. I mean, this guy will lose as much time in the month as this will lose in the year. That's just a simple fact, and that's being pretty optimistic on the Navitimer there. And I do maintain that for many people, a quartz watch is just going to be a better choice in general for life. But the thing is, they're very, very different pieces. It's more of a matter of taste than anything, and I suspect there aren't many people who would directly compare these like, oh, God, which one? It's going to be a matter of taste, but make sure that you're considering the more modern options, too, especially given the fact that this is half the price of this guy, which is a major distinction there. But anyways, look, on the whole, the Navitimer here is great. This is a really excellent watch. I like it very, very, very much. It's beautiful, it's functional, it's exceptionally well made. And although not everyone needs a chronograph, and this is going to be a little much for a lot of people, this is one of the watches that I would absolutely be picking up if my collection, if my budget were a little bit bigger. This is one I've always looked at like, God, that's pretty. And it really is. And I suspect that if I got a chance to wear one for a longer period of time, that I got a chance to really, bond with one, I would absolutely be calling it a gem. As it is, though, I haven't had quite enough time to say it. But the thing is, ultimately, although it's a lot of cash, 100%, I think this is a really excellent timepiece, and I think that the Navitimer could absolutely navigate its way right into your heart. So there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourself an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.